All right, Jay, I got asked this question over the weekend. I hadn't thought of it. I think we're all going to agree with it, but it's going to let us get into a bigger free agency conversation with the Browns. But the Giants, for example, signed a couple of Ravens players. Former Harbaugh guys followed Harbaugh. The Falcons with Kevin Stefanski have signed some former Kevin Stefanski players, some hysterical former Kevin Stefanski players.
Who'd they sign?
Austin Hooper.
Oh, God.
Back with his old buddies.
Austin Hooper kind of rehabilitated himself
He did have a good year last year.
But when he was here, I think he had vertigo when he was here. I mean, he was running routes. There was no one near him. He was falling down. I'm like, what happened?
Is he the only one? Is Hooper the only one?
I think he is.
I believe he is, yeah.
So you're talking out your you-know-what a little bit on Stefanski.
Strong man.
I said he brought one.
One. The guy hasn't been here. He hadn't coached him in 4 years.
I'm sorry that one is a fact, and you don't like the fact
All
that I
right,
gave you a
fine.
fact. I apologize that my fact
You
is
don't know if it's
factually
a fact he went there because of Kevin Stefanski. I doubt that was the case.
I'm just saying he signed a former guy.
Okay, fine.
The question I was asked this weekend was, does it concern you at all that Todd Monken didn't sign any former Ravens players?
I have to tell you, I didn't even think about that.
That was my answer for the record.
I didn't. I didn't think about that. You'd be perfect to talk to about this. Players or coaches get married to players. We know that. And I think of guys like Parcells and Belichick in particular. They got onto a guy and they freaking loved them, and they would bring them even if the music had kind of stopped in their parade. They would still kind of bring them along. And because they believed in the culture that they brought, that they had buy-in to the Belichick way or the Parcells way. I'm not overly concerned by this, and the reason I don't think I thought about it was because I think by and large they were a B+ in what they did in free agency. I thought they hit it out of the park in free agency.
First of all,
the fact that none of them are Ravens didn't even come into my mind.
Whoever asked you this question is a dope, Mike. First of all, that's
fair for the record.
What's that?
That's fair.
That's fair.
No, very fair.
You don't have to give names, but you're confirming his.
The Browns were interested in Tyler Linderbaum, right? That's the Ravens guy.
Yes.
The Raiders paid him a ton of money.
Yeah, so
the Browns couldn't afford to pay that.
Yep.
He didn't it wasn't like, I don't want to go with Coach Monken. He went with where the money was. That's what most players do.
Yeah.
Who else on the Ravens offense were you supposed to sign, Mike?
Would you even want?
He mentioned Isaiah Likely was the guy that he wanted Cleveland to
The
sign.
Browns weren't interested in Isaiah Likely.
They weren't.
I don't think that had anything to do with Todd Monken.
Well, Todd, it may have. Todd may have said, no, he's just not my kind of player.
Well, maybe, but it's I can't imagine there's any way I didn't hear the Browns connect. The Browns were not going to spend how much did they pay Isaiah Likely? Whoever signed him,
more than we would have paid him.
He got 3 for $40.
Yeah,
why would the Browns pay 3 for $40 for a tight end?
Yeah, no way.
And by the way,
we've got a great tight end.
He's a nice talent, but he's done nothing.
Well, and he's also very similar to Fannin.
Exactly, you got Fannin for no money.
The same player,
right? Now, if he was a wide receiver, that's a different conversation.
The Browns signed Jack Stoll, who's a blocking tight end for probably $1 million.
Nothing. Couple million, I think.
So that's a terrible example because the Browns don't need Browns need a lot, but they didn't need a pass catching tight end.
Now, in your experience, you probably had personal relationships with coaches that even if they ended up not signing you, they may have called you and said, "Hey, listen, we'd like to, kick the tires."
Yeah.
That exists. That's a real thing.
For sure.
But I think for it to eventually work out, I imagine more often than not it doesn't work out because another team comes in and offers more money, or it just wasn't the right fit this time around, or whatever.
Depends on who the guy is. I'll give you an example of this. So I was in Minnesota. I was drafted there, and the staff got blown out. New coaches come in. Mike Tomlin became our new DC, and I thought I was going to basically be the nickel, and no, Tomlin had his guy from Tampa who was I think he was a late round pick or an undrafted guy. And he became a free agent, and he brought him in and immediately put him ahead of me on the depth chart. And I was like, okay, well, this sucks.
Yeah,
but I was like, I get it now. This is a business, and this guy's putting this defense in, and he wanted that guy. Really, he wanted him there because he could teach all the other guys the defense.
Yeah, right.
Part
of the culture thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that you may start to see that at some point, but to Bull's point, who else did you want him to get in terms of the high-end top guys?
Right.
There may be players that Todd Monkens had on other teams. Who
Yeah,
knows?
right.
It could be somebody that he had here in 2019 when he was
But
here.
there was
right?
no other like Isaiah Likely and Linderbaum were the only significant offensive free
Yeah,
agents.
I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, like Monken brings in a quarterback that he's coached just to kind of help these young guys learn the system.
Yeah, I don't know who that would be. I'm trying to think. But
I can't off the top of my head think about that.
Speaking of quarterbacks, did you see the Bengals signed Josh Johnson this weekend?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, the only reason I
That's yet
full
another
circle?
team that he's.
Yeah, the only reason I brought him up is because if you look at his
Oh, he's played
all
for
the
everybody.
teams he's been at,
This
this
is-
is his
yeah.
third time with the Bengals.
Yeah.
But if you look at his list of all the stops he's had, it's just crazy.
It is nuts. He's played for practically.
It
half
also-
the
Getting
league.
a job must be a great
everybody.
guy.
It also tells you like must be a great guy.
Yes.
too. But he's also probably a really good quarterback because
Right,
you
right,
got to
right.
still trust to put the guy in the game. Like
Yeah,
he
yeah,
started
yeah.
games
think
for a
how
long.
many quarterbacks have entered the league since he did.
Yeah.
Right.
That might fill those backup
Hundreds.
roles.
Hundreds.
Right, right,
of
yeah.
quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Yet he keeps getting recycled, and they keep calling his
Yeah.
name. Andy Dalton did that. Andy
He's
Dalton's still in the damn league.
He's still in the league.
And
yeah.
the guy was a decade ago a
Yeah.
premier quarterback.
But Josh Johnson was never a premier
Never.
quarterback.
No, that's
No.
true.
He was always in
He's
this
been
role.
backup
Yeah.
the whole for like 20 years.
Colt McCoy was
Did you-
another guy.
Have you
Colt
guys
McCoy forever,
Have you
yeah.
guys seen Josh Johnson's got a commercial?
Yes, where he took all the different jerseys.
Yes.
It's a cell phone commercial.
Yes.
Talks about changing. I've
Well,
changed.
there's a series of commercials, not this, it
the
must be
backup
separate.
quarterbacks.
With
Yeah,
all the
no,
backup
yeah,
quarterbacks.
he's not in that
Well,
one,
were you guys here one night? We had Brian
Yeah,
Hoyer on.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I asked
yeah,
him about
and you
that.
asked him why he
'Cause
wasn't in
He's
it.
got to get in that. He should
should.
be in that.
Yeah, he should because he's the perennial backup.
Anyway.
So, Jay, you weren't here earlier when we talked about the free agent signings because you were in spring training last week. But Zion Johnson, Elton Jenkins, Tevin Jenkins, Titus Howard, Quincy Williams. Let's hear it. Let it rip.
I've said already, I think it's a solid B. We do have to wait and see how it translates. But if you would have told me before the free agent period started that we were going to get all of that talent addressing all of our needs, I would have said exactly what I'm saying here. Wow, how the hell did they pull that off? And I understand that the restructuring of Deshaun Watson's contract had something to do with that.
Yeah.
But I think Johnson is probably the centerpiece. Would you guys agree with that? I think he
was the highest paid guard in free agency. So
Yeah, I mean, I think Elton Jenkins is actually the best player.
He's
of
a
them.
Pro Bowler, right? I mean,
He was as a guard. I think he's going to play safety.
but he gives center. He gives you some
crazy
flexibility.
if he played safety.
So
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
would be impressive.
if he played safety, that'd
Yeah.
be the only two-way ever center
Yeah, right.
safety. No, I think that's awesome. Not pictured there, by the way, was the guy that I took grief over when I said, wait a minute, we've got to re-sign our punter. You got to.
Yeah.
Corey, that's a good point.
He was eligible to move, and I can't remember what the question was, but my answer to it was, well, I want to bring back the
When
punter.
we were talking about the
the 8 guys you
the 8
protect
guys
in
you
expansion
keep.
draft.
Yeah.
if there was an expansion draft.
Yeah, that's right. That's what the question
Speaking of
was.
which, there's looks like there's going to be 2 new NBA teams in 2 seasons.
Well, that'll be
So there'll be an exexpansion draft.
Are we getting Seattle back? We got-
Seattle and
has
Vegas.
to be Seattle. Has to be
Seattle and Vegas.
Seattle and
Yeah.
Vegas.
Ooh, the NBA in Vegas. Man,
That's dangerous.
man. Can you imagine? They're going to have baseball, basketball,
Yeah.
and football. And
And
a
hockey.
decade ago, and hockey. And
Yeah.
a decade ago, they had nothing.
Nothing.
And it was widely regarded that they would never get anything because
Right, 'cause it's
of the
not a
distance between
hometown-
gambling and because the distance between
Right, that's
gambling
true.
and pro sports. But now they're intertwined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they're going to have all 4.
Yeah. The
It's
Browns have
incredible.
done a nice job. How much better they're on the offensive line, we won't know till they play.
Yeah.
But they've added legit. One of the 4 guys they added was already here, Tevin Jenkins.
Yes.
The other 3 are new. They're all starters. Zion Johnson, if you look at the PFF grades, they're not great. But
Hey.
he was a first-round pick.
What did
and there's a lot
Petonio
of
do?
potential.
I was in Arizona, and
Right now, he's just a free agent. He hasn't retired. He might still retire.
we want him to come back.
I think that ship has sailed.
I
definitely
think so
not-
too.
he's
I mean, he
definitely not
signed
coming
2
back.
guards, unless Jenkins is the center,
There are rumblings that if he does not retire, he's going somewhere else.
that he wouldn't come back here.
That's correct.
You know what? If I was Joel, I'd give it a shot because you've got one more year.
Go play
You want to experience playoff football.
Yeah.
Maybe he goes to
Right.
Atlanta. I don't know if they need a guard.
I don't even know if they're a playoff team.
I don't know, but he and Stefanski
Could
always
be.
seem to be on the same
Yeah.
page.
Yeah, they had a good relationship.
Stefanski did sign Cameron Thomas too, so that's 2 former players.
Whoa,
who followed him.
big addition.
Wait, who? What was the other
Cameron
one?
Thomas.
Cam Thomas,
Cam
the
Thomas.
defensive end.
It's funny the guys that
Yeah.
coaches take a liking to,
There you go.
and
Your point is proven, Jay.
Yeah, there
Sure,
you go.
Kevin Stefanski and Cameron Thomas had a really close
They were tight.
relationship.
They were tight. Yeah, you see them all the time at the Dairy Queen in Lakewood.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Off season.
Jay, we didn't mention Quincy Williams. You talked about the offensive line. They lost Devin Bush, brought Quincy. We're just getting all your kind of free agency thoughts here because you missed last week. But replacing Devin Bush with Quincy Williams, a guy who Devin Bush had his best season ever in 2025. Quincy Williams was an All-Pro in 2023 under new defensive coordinator Mike Rutenberg. So that's his guy he brought with him and brings back.
That's a perfect example of a coach saying, is he going to get the dot? They're not going to take it away from Schlesinger, will they? But I think he had the dot.
He did have the dot in New York, yes.
So it's a guy that absolutely knows the system. He's a good fit. To your point, when you bring in a guy, you hope that he can kind of spread the culture and teach the defense.
Bit of a coach on the field.
Right, and that's always good, especially at that position. So I think I hate to see Devin. I thought he had a great season last year.
He did.
I hate to see him go, but I think this is kind of a wash. Now look, 6 games, 8 games in, we might look at it saying, oh my God, this Williams guy's killing us. I don't know. But right now, at least on the surface, the other thing is, too, you don't know how these moves are going to mesh together, particularly on the offensive line. The one thing that I've always said is that, they're all units and they all play together. But to me, the most important unit, because there's 5 of them, is the offensive line and how they fit together. And there is a symbiotic relationship that goes on there. And it's like an orchestra. And you got to feel for what your guy's going to do in a certain situation. That's going to take time because you're taking all parts that have never been together before and you're mixing them together. So I think there's going to be a learning curve at the offensive line. But by and large, if I'm a quarterback, if I'm Shedeur Sanders on this team and I'm looking at the offensive line today compared to what it was, I think this is a big improvement, at least on paper. But if it doesn't come to fruition, then we're back to square one. But I like all the moves they did. I think I was impressed with how they moved the money, how they, because I've always said we're cash strapped. But somehow, some way.
Yeah. I mean, it did factor in. They were not able to go the distance on Linderbaum, who would have been the best addition.
Agreed.
Because they did. There are limits.
But we still have there's still money left.
Andrew Berry can restructure as many contracts as he wants to open up as much cap space as they need. It just keeps pushing the can down the road, and eventually
there's got to be a sting. I would think.
Well,
but the cap keeps going up.
The Browns have this massive advantage that their owner is willing to kick the can. The only good thing about the owner is he's willing to kick the can down the road longer than any team in the league. The problem is they keep screwing up.
It hasn't worked.
And
at some point, I'm wondering what his threshold for pain is.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think we've seen with Gilbert that there is a pain threshold that you can
eventually
reach. Yeah. And, right now he keeps writing checks. But, if you keep doing the same thing and getting the same results, at some point he's going to say, well, I can't spend my way out of this.
I mean, they have so much dead money on their cap.
At one point, they were paying 5 head coaches.
Yeah, well, that's not even on the cap.
No, I know it's not. But that shows you his threshold for pain.
Right.
It's not right. Get him out.
Yeah.
Well, you're paying 4 head coaches already. Now I'm going to be paying 5.
Yeah.
He just keeps writing the checks. True. And we're very lucky in that regard. Boy, I wish the baseball club's owners had that kind of depth to their pockets, because if that was the case, and it was proven again when I was out there in spring training, and you get to see behind when you walk through the building every single day, all day, and you see room after room of it just filled with people on computers, filled.
Yeah.
And you realize how much goes into it on the behind the scenes and how good they are and how much they get that right. If they had a little bit of money to spend, what a difference that could make. And I think the Browns have it the other way. The Browns have the deep pockets, but not the brain power.
Yeah, right.
And I'd rather have the brain power, because the proof, the Guardians win, and they're doing it with brain power, not wallet power.
Yeah, yes.
And the Browns have all kinds of dollars, and apparently they don't have much in the brains department.
No, definitely.